In this lesson, we will use the IFCONFIG utility to assess organizational security. We are in the IPconfig IFCONFIG portion of the video series. This lesson is part of a video series that gets you ready for the hands-on portion of the CompTIA Security Plus exam and designed to give you hands-on experience with the operations and incident response section of the exam. So what is IFCONFIG? IFCONFIG is a utility in Linux used to configure and display network interface parameters. It is used by system administrators, network engineers, and Linux users. IFCONFIG has been part of Linux distributions for many years and is still used today, and is used anytime there's a need to configure or display NIC settings. The utility is available on Linux operating systems and only Linux operating systems. IPconfig is based on Windows. IFCONFIG is used to manage network interfaces, assign IP addresses, configure network parameters, and troubleshoot network connectivity. The utility is invoked from the command line, allowing users to view and modify network interface configurations by specifying various options and arguments. The rest of the how is what this video is all about, so let's get into it. First, you will need the companion guide, which you can find through the link in the show notes below. Also, if you enjoyed this content, please subscribe to the channel to ensure you never miss any new videos. So we're back to Kali Linux. We're going to do IFCONFIG, which is interface config. We have our companion guide on the left. We have Kali Linux on the right. So let's go ahead right into the instructions. So first it says launch a terminal session, and we can do that with Control-Alt-T, or we can go right into the Kali box here and we see terminal emulator, so I'm going to select it from there this time around. As always, I want to make this a little bit bigger, so I'm going to use Control+ to just get the screen a little bit bigger for us here. Of course, we can zoom in when we need to, so I'm going to click that off, and it says to see the command, we're going to type IFCONFIG, 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 and you see that IFCONFIG gives us, well, the interface configuration, allows us to display some of the output. I can also do an IFCONFIG -A for all, and this gives me all of the options. If you notice, they're very similar and identical because I only have two interfaces. I have Ethernet 0 and I have the loopback, the local address, which is 127.0.0.1. Okay, so let's do a little bit of housekeeping here. I'm going to check all the available network interfaces as it says here, and we're going to clear the screen. And I'm going to run that command again, but since I'm on Linux, I'm going to basically just do an up arrow, and we're going to analyze the output of interface config or IFCONFIG. So F0 means that my adapter or my network interface card is Ethernet 0. It has these flags. These particular numbers are not that important, but we can follow the rest, which is the interface is up, it's broadcasting, it's running, it supports multicast, and it has a max transfer unit of 1500. So 1500 bytes is the largest frame size, if you will, for an Ethernet packet. So it says that it's MTU. Down here we have the IPv4 IP address. So this is 10.0.2.15. This is the subnet mask. It's a class C or /24. And this is the broadcast address 255. This is the IPv6 address here. It gives us a little bit of the information there. This is the MAC address, the hardware address, the burnt-in unique identifier for the network interface, and it says it has a transmit queue length of 1000. So that's just a queue. We don't have to worry about that too much. We also have the receive packets. So this gives us some receive and transmit data. So we know that we can receive packets of 1 byte. We also know that there were no dropped packets, no overruns, 0 frames. Same thing with the transmit errors, no transmission errors here, no drop, no overruns, no carrier, no collisions. So this is a nice healthy looking type of Ethernet or IFCONFIG display that you would like to see. The other thing we want to take a look at is the loopback, the local address. So this allows us to make sure that the TCP IP stack is working properly. And this allows you to ping the local address here. This is the physical local address, I should say, just for that Ethernet loopback. So we have the net mask, it's a class A, 255.255. This is the IPv6 version of that. Loop is not too important in terms of it's just a loopback. It's connecting right to the interface card. It's like touching yourself to make sure, like if you ever get hurt, you just want to make sure that everything is fine. So you're basically doing a limb check and making sure everything is fine. And then we have the transmit down here, which is, this is the transmission data, and this is the receive data. And this is what it looks like for an interface configuration if you run it without any options. So we're going to tick off the analyze output, and let's just go off script for a little bit and do a denial of service demonstration with a ping bomb. So if you notice, the maximum transfer unit here are different sizes here. So on the local loopback, it says the biggest frame is 65,000, but on the Ethernet card itself, the NIC card or the adapter is 1500. So let's go ahead and just actually ping this address here. So I'm going to ping the 10. Give myself a little bit of space, 10.0.2.15. And as you know, with the previous exercise, I can change the packet size. So I'm going to just do 65,000 for now. So 65,000, just so you see that it can work. So you see that although it says the MTU is 1500, what that means is that there's fragmentation of these packets. It has to be broken down into smaller chunks, and it'll be delivered on max size chunks of 1500. And we can do that with this interface with no problem. I'm going to Control Z to stop, and then I'm going to clear. If I type it properly, I'm going to clear. Once again, pick this from the history. I'm just doing an IFCONFIG so we can see that again. And this time I'm going to ping slightly higher. I'm going to go beyond 65,000 so that way we can have a denial of service. And we're going to do 70,000. And this should choke that interface. So previously at 65,000, we were able to fragment the packets and they were still being delivered. At 70,000, it's just not paying any attention to it. This interface can't return any values for this ping. And this is sometimes called a ping bomb or a denial of service attack, because this is a malformed packet and it makes the interface basically overwhelmed. In another tutorial, we'll be using a packet crafting tool called hping3, and this allows you to shape packets in a variety of different ways, and one of them is either a malformed or a large packet, and you can create denial of service attacks where you can actually ping bomb an interface. But we just wanted to quickly show you how you can do that with a regular ping. IFCONFIG or regular ping can do that as well, and we'll see this a little bit later. I kind of went off script. I just wanted to show you a denial of service demonstration with ping and bring that back in. But back to IFCONFIG. So we want to view the details of a specific interface. So to stop this here, I can do Control Z, as you see here, and I'm also going to clear my screen to bring it on the top. And now that we're back on the top, we're going to just type IFCONFIG, and just to see what that looks like, so that way we have the Ethernet information up and the interface up. And now we're going to actually assign an IP address. So I'm going to do IFCONFIG, and we're going to do F0. Good, so that's Ethernet 0. And as the command says over here, we're going to do INET. So that's the IPv4 version of it, and it's going to be 192.168.1.100. We hit enter, and again I have to do the sudo command because I'm changing the network interface. So I'm going to do up arrow Control A sudo, and I IFCONFIG. And if I do another IFCONFIG here, just to look at the values, we see that we have changed the IP address here. So it is now 192.168.1.100, where in the previous session here we had it at 10.215. So we can use the IFCONFIG F0 INET 192.168.1 command to change the IP address. Let's go ahead and set that off in terms of our housekeeping, and then we can do the same thing for the net mask. So we can change the subnet mask as well. So I'm going to clear my screen as we usually do. I need to be on this side as always. And let's go ahead and clear this so I can see. And we're going to scroll back down here with our companion guide just to make sure that we have everything set up. So I'm going to actually set up and do the net mask. So I'm going to try and repurpose this command a little bit. and I'm going to, instead of inet, I'm going to do netmask, and it's going to be a class C, so 255.255.255.0, and I'm going to get rid of the rest of this command with a control K, which is kill, and I'm going to change the mask, and we change that mask. So we'll do that again so that way we can all see this here. So IFCONFIG, so we'll do that one more time. This is a class C subnet mask. Let's turn it to a class B. So let's just make this 255.0. So 0.0. And then we're going to do an IFCONFIG, and we should see that change from a class C to a class B. So /24/16. And this is how we can change the subnet mask. Pretty easy. As a homework assignment, you can go ahead and change the broadcast address. It's the same concept. IFCONFIG, F0 broadcast, and now you put the broadcast address over in it this way. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do one more thing here, and we got a couple more things to do. As we can see here, we can change the mode of the card and put it into what they would call promiscuous mode. So right here, let's just go ahead and type the command and see what it looks like. First, we'll get an IFCONFIG so we can see that. Then I do IFCONFIG. Got to get the command right. F0 is the one that I want to affect, and I'm going to put prom, and then I'm going to just tab over to make sure I have it right. And we now have it again. I have to do this sudo thing, and I'm going to do super user do, and I'm in. So this is how we turn it on. So it is now in promiscuous mode, and this is how we turn it off, minus promiscuous mode. So the question is, what is promiscuous mode? So real briefly, when a network adapter is set to promiscuous mode, it captures and delivers all packets it receives to the operating system's network stack. What does that mean? So regardless of whether the packets are addressed to its MAC address or its IP address, this enables us to analyze network traffic. So rather than just look at packets that are destined for this particular Ethernet card, we're going to eavesdrop or listen. And what does promiscuous mean? It means non-selective or non-discriminatory. So we're going to look at all traffic, not just traffic that's addressed to the IPv4 address, this IP address, or this IPv6, or the MAC address. We're going to listen to it all. And you can turn an Ethernet adapter into promiscuous mode or non-promiscuous mode. So it's always important to make sure that we know how to turn these things on or off, and this is why we show the commands as two sides of the same coin. Okay, so we're back. We know how to enable an Ethernet card to make sure it's in promiscuous mode. We know how to disable it. And it says if we ever make any of these changes, we should know how to go ahead and actually restart. So anytime you make these big changes in IFCONFIG, you can actually go ahead and restart the networking services. So I'm going to clear my screen, and we're going to see what that looks like. So sudo, it's a super user do. We're going to do service. Yeah, let's just go ahead and type that. And we're going to do networking, and we're going to do a restart. And it's usually a good idea to do that to restart the service. Another thing that may come up is, why not just use the network configuration? There's a graphical utility where you can change a lot of this. So let's bring IFCONFIG back onto the top here so we can see. So we have IFCONFIG. I can go to Kali Linux here, and there's an advanced network configuration option. So I'm just type advanced network configuration, and there's a graphical utility that we could use here. So I'm going to just put this over on this side here so we can see. And this is the Ethernet connection. And you see this kind of like the same information here. So we have the Ethernet. This is network security, which we'll do in another video. We have IPv4, and I can add the addresses here if I wanted to. So if I wanted to turn this back to a 10.0.2.25, I can do that. I can do a 255.255.255.0, and then I can put in a gateway. I can go ahead and put in DNS, so 8.8.8.8, and I can use a graphical utility to do that. The reason why we like the command line is because you can script a lot of these commands, and we can batch them in and make sure that when a server reboots, that it can run a script and set it to exactly the settings that we want. And sometimes the command line gives you a little bit more flexibility. But in either case, we just wanted to let you know that you can do this in a graphical utility, and in some other exercises, we'll see that as well. The main point here is that you can go ahead and actually change these, either command line or graphical, and when you do, you should run the sudo service networking restart command. Let's go ahead and check that off. So if you notice, as we were going through IFCONFIG, there were times where we had to use the sudo command, superuser_do, and the question always comes up, why not just log in as root or admin privileges and just run everything without having to type the sudo command? And the question is, should I run as root? And the answer is no, and here's why. First and foremost, for security. The root user has unrestricted privileges and access to all system resources. Logging in directly as root increases the risk of accidentally executing destructive commands or falling victim to malicious actions. By using sudo, users are prompted for their own password before executing privileged commands, which adds an extra layer of security and accountability. Sometimes we call that defense in depth. Number 2, principle of least privilege. The principle of least privilege suggests that users should only have the privileges necessary to perform their tasks, minimizing the potential impact of errors or unauthorized actions. With sudo, regular users can be granted specific administrative privileges for selected commands, rather than having full root access. Number 3, auditing and accountability. When using sudo, all executed commands are logged, allowing system administrators to track and review the actions performed by users. This enhances accountability and facilitates auditing processes to identify potential security breaches or mistakes. Granular access control. With sudo, administrators can define fine-grained access control policies, granting specific privileges to individual users or groups for particular commands. This level of control helps to ensure that users only have access to the commands they need, minimizing the risk of accidental or intentional misuse. And then number 5, avoiding mistakes. By default, Linux systems often disable the root account login to prevent accidental damage caused by running administrative commands without proper consideration. By using sudo, users are forced to think more deliberately about their impact of their actions, reducing the likelihood of making harmful mistakes. So in other words, sometimes we want to elevate our privileges when we need to do administrative work, then de-escalate the privilege when you're doing regular work like maintenance and things like that. You don't want to make a mistake. So we wanted to point that out because sometimes we do see learners say this is inconvenient, log in as root, and that's generally frowned upon in the industry. Okay, so public service announcement aside, we're going to tick this off. I'll save that in the command prompt so that way you have this access to you. And then we get down to something a little bit different here. IPconfig and IP. Now, although we talk about IFCONFIG and it's important for the Security Plus, it is considered an older deprecated command. We do use IP as a more modern and updated command, and you can see a little bit of that here. So for example, if I want to show the IP address using the IP command, I can go here and just do IP adder, and it's going to show me the same information here. So the loopback address is 127.0.0.1. I can see that here. There's no MAC address because it's a logical interface. There is no physical address here. Also on the Eth0, this is Ethernet 0, we can see the IPv4, 192.168.1.100. We see the broadcast address here because it's a class B, and you get a little bit more information. If I want to bring the interface up, I can basically use the same command. Personally, I came up in the IFCONFIG days, so I tend to use IFCONFIG. Just wanted to let you know that IP command is available on most distros. When we do the Ubuntu course, actually IFCONFIG is not defaulted, not a default install. You have to go to NetTools to install it. But at any rate, I wanted to provide this table so that way you can see the comparison and continue to explore with IFCONFIG. The other thing is IFCONFIG versus IPconfig. So IPconfig is a command line utility primarily used in Windows operating systems, including Windows 10. It essentially works the same as IPConfig, IFCONFIG. They're the same. The only difference is that one is on Windows, the other one is on Linux or Mac. More specifically, IFCONFIG is on Mac and Linux distros, where IPConfig is on Windows distros. Okay, with that aside, let's do our housekeeping so that way we know the difference between IFCONFIG and IPConfig. And then also, let's get some of the help lines here. So let's go ahead and clear, and we're going to look at the help options. So I can do IFCONFIG and -- help to get some of the options here, and we used some of them before. So here's the net mask, here's how we can add an address. This is the changing the transmit queue length if we wanted to change it, if there's a need to change it. So I encourage you to explore those. And you can also use the man if command if you want the manual. So let's just go ahead and see that. The man if command is going to give you the full-blown manual, so that way you can learn a little bit more about IFCONFIG. And as we say, that's it. You now have a list of steps to practice the if command with common and popular options in Linux. Experiment with the different options, observe the output, understand how they affect the if command, and important, always remember to exercise caution while making changes to network configurations, and always have proper backups or documentation available.